This program was made possible by the law firm of Zalman and Schnorman, whose practice is limited to personal injury and insurance law. Welcome to Lawline with your host, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman is a distinguished trial attorney, author, and lecturer. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law today. And now, we introduce our guests and our host, Alan Schnorman.
Welcome to Lawline. The right to a trial by jury is one of the most fundamental privileges of a democracy. Today we're going to look at the impact jury reform has had on the makeup of the jury pool and the verdict juries are rendering. Our guests are Norman Goodman, Commissioner of Jurors and County Clerk of New York County, and Gary Pillersdorf, President-elect of New York State Trial Lawyers. Hello, Norman. Hello, Gary. Norman, tell us, what's happened? What are all these jury reforms we keep hearing about?
Well, there are two kinds of reforms. There are statutory reforms, and there are reforms that are administratively done within the court system.
Well, if I'm going to be a juror, what can I expect when I go down to your courthouse, 60 Center Street? What can I expect?
Well, it's not what you can expect. It's what the jurors themselves feel, what they perceive about reform. For years, juries were made up of a cross-section of the population which excluded 27 occupational categories.
Lawyers, doctors.
Embalmers. That's right.
Okay.
Embalmers, nurses, and so on.
Right.
27 categories. And there was a general perception that the burden of jury service was not evenly spread through the community. And people try to duck jury service. They felt that if there's a privileged group
A businessman who may have what he considered more important things to do.
Exactly.
Right.
They would try to duck it, and there used to be a lot of jokes. You know, how are you going to trust your case to 12 people who couldn't avoid jury service?
Right.
That kind of thing, and that was a perception that was pervasive, you know,
right.
throughout the community. And we used to give them postponements. We used to give 3, 4, 5 postponements to jurors. And we tried for years, decades really, to get the legislature to listen to us. I personally addressed the Assembly Judiciary Committee on at least 3 or 4 different occasions, different years, different sessions of the legislature. And the reaction of these legislators, they'd laugh at me.
But Norman, now all these groups have to serve.
Now, Judith Kaye came on the scene. That's the point I want to get to.
Chief Judge of the State of New York.
Chief Judge of the State of New York. And with her help, believe me, this was, I attribute it all to Judge Kaye.
Right.
And the legislature started to listen. They weren't laughing anymore. And in 1995, they passed legislation which repealed all of the occupational exemptions. The legislature went further than we asked them to go. They not only repealed the occupational exemptions, they repealed the disqualifications, because in addition to the occupational disqualifications, the occupational exemptions, elected officials were disqualified from serving.
Well, I know. I saw Mayor Giuliani had to go down.
Right. They couldn't.
The chief judge had to go down.
Exactly.
The chief administrative judge.
I went down. Myself. I served. I served too.
Were you selected on a jury?
I was not selected.
Gary, what effect has this had as a practical matter? You do civil trials, Gary.
Right.
As a practical matter, is this now a jury of one's peers to have judges and lawyers and doctors?
First of all, there were some exemptions that had to be removed, but with all due respect, they went too far. There is no purpose served to sit down and try to impanel a group, and then you have 2 firemen, a police officer, a doctor. We're just not helping the public and having them. I'm not saying that they should be exempt, but I'm not saying that they should be in any kind of special category. All right, but the look on the juror's face of, okay, I'll either sit here and listen to who got hit when they were crossing the street, or I'll put out a fire. What do you want me to do? That type of concept now permeates everyone. They're glad everyone's there. All right, but the immediate effect is there's a disgruntled, and appropriately so, there were always people who hated to be on jury duty. We start every jury selection with, I know something about each and every one of you. I know that you are a resident of the county in which you're being impaneled. I know that you're either a voter or a car driver or on some kind of subversive list. I know you got nailed and you ran out of excuses. And then we end it with, I hope, however, despite the fact that you don't want to be here, you recognize that you too might someday need a juror, and therefore you don't want to be here, but you're going to be fair about it. But there are people now who can't be fair about it. There is no reason to bring a doctor out of surgery and put him on a panel. Now, if they want to volunteer, perhaps it should be voluntary. The policeman, the thing we see, and you must see it all the time, when a police officer comes in, the second he identifies himself as a police officer, you can tell he can't understand why he's there.
The county clerk is shaking his head.
Yeah, we've had, our experience has been to the contrary over the last, since January 1st of 1996. We have had lawyers serving on cases, being picked. When I say serving, I don't mean just sitting in the assembly room, and I don't just mean being subjected to a voir dire. I'm talking about being selected on cases. We had a murder case in the first few months after this repeal went into effect, in must have been April of '96. We had a murder case where we had an active sitting police sergeant, New York City police sergeant, on a murder case, and a lawyer on the same case, who were selected. Now, you know how many challenges are granted in criminal cases. You know, they had plenty of opportunity to get rid of a New York City police sergeant. But when these people come in, they're glad to serve. And if they answer their questions right, they're not going to be able to get off for cause just because they're a New York City police sergeant.
Glad to serve is not the impression. And I have to agree with something Norman said. When Judge Kay initiated the jury reform projects, she started with committees, both of attorneys and lay public. She clearly, in the over 25 years that I've been practicing, has had the most care and interest in the people sitting there. She's not only gone into who sits, but, and it's a tribute to what you've done in your section, the rooms are cleaner, the bathrooms are working. They've taken it from soup to nuts and made tremendous improvements. The problem that we see is, as you sit down with a panel now, there are people who everyone on the lawyer side of the table and on the jury side of the table wonder why they're sitting there. Is society being served to its best extent by draining these people out? Lawyers were, while we were excused because of a pre-existing knowledge base that we brought in, that was the real reason why lawyers were excused, and we still have that base, and I would have absolutely no trouble sitting on a real estate case, on a commercial case, because I don't know anything about it, except from what I learned in law school, and I got to believe most of that's changed.
We give lawyers, we give jurors, all jurors and lawyers, an opportunity to select, in New York County anyway. We give them the option of serving on the civil side, if they're criminal lawyers. If they're civil lawyers, we give them an opportunity to sit on the criminal side. If they have some kind of unique experience that disqualifies them from serving on a particular kind of case, we will excuse them from that kind of case.
But Norman, let me ask you this,
Yes.
if I may. Is this truly, if you have a working class client, the jurors now, in at least York County, is it a jury of the peers of this working class client?
Yeah, we have a cross-section of the population better than we've ever had before. Better than ever. Now, of course, New York County is a unique county. New York County is not your typical demographical example. New York County is, this is just a bit of trivia for your viewers. New York County geographically is the smallest county in the United States. The smallest county, 15 miles from the top to the bottom and 1.5 miles wide. It's the smallest county. It's not the most populous county in New York City. It's only the third most populous county. Brooklyn and Queens both having nearly twice the population of Manhattan. And yet, during the hours of 9 and 5 in New York County, it's probably the most densely populated place on earth, because people come into Manhattan from New Jersey, from Connecticut, from Nassau County, from Suffolk County, and they all commute and they come into New York County.
How many people come into New York? Do you have any idea?
I don't know those statistics.
Tens of millions.
Certainly millions. And I don't know how many millions, but certainly millions. And those people come into New York County every single day, 5 days a week, and they interact with each other. They commit crimes against each other. They steal from each other. They have accidents. They are subjected to accident. Taxi.
But Norman, that transient population are not the people who are on your panels. And the problem problem that we see as trial attorneys with the New York County jury is New York County is probably the most disproportionate of all counties. There is an incredibly large number of very wealthy, very highly educated people who live here, all right? We jokingly refer to them as the yuppie jurors, the titans of industry who are coming in, the investment bankers. I don't know exactly what they do, but they all have these Wall Street type jobs. And then you have the poverty belts in Manhattan. Manhattan probably has one of the smallest middle class populations of any of the counties.
Well, that was the point. That was the point I was going to get to.
And I have a question. As long as I got you here and I got an audience, from a practicing lawyer, it seemed to us that at one point the New York County juror we were getting a much larger percentage of the poverty belt or the peripheral people in the city. Now we walk into panel rooms and it can be 100% investment bankers. It can be 100% of the Wall Street, Midtown, Park Avenue people. We simply don't see the Lower East Side juror anymore. We don't see the Upper Manhattan.
They're there.
We don't see
There. The Lower East Side juror is still there. The blue collar people are still there. We see them all the time.
Swallowed by the captains of industry.
But one of the problems is because of the demographic description that I've just given. What you have is a relatively small population serving one of the largest court systems. It wasn't intended that way. Serving one of the largest court systems in the country.
Without question.
In New York County, we have a relatively small population because we can only pick jurors from among the people who sleep here. In New York County. We can't pick jurors from Brooklyn or Queens. There are constitutional prohibitions against drawing jurors from another county. So we can't do that. So Bronx people can't serve in New York County, and nor the other counties. So we are stuck with a population of people who live here serving a court system that wasn't designed to be served by this population. That's true. I'll concede that, but we do have a better cross section because in the days you're talking about, when you saw a lot of blue collar people and so-called poverty belt people, we didn't see those yuppies.
No, we didn't see them at all.
We didn't see the yuppies.
They were excused.
They were living here. Then they should have served, and they're now serving.
Norman, give us an idea. Where do you get your people from? Where did the list come from to?
We have 5 sources. The main source that we get our jurors from is the Board of Elections list of registered voters.
Okay.
But then we also get jurors from the list of licensed drivers. Motor Vehicle supplies us with a list of licensed drivers. We get a list from the New York State, from Taxation and Finance, of people who get a W-2 during the year. We don't care whether they pay taxes or they don't pay taxes, but we get a list of people that Taxation and Finance has as
earned income.
That's right, earned income people. So we have a list of so-called taxpayers,
right.
The income taxpayers list. We get the welfare list. We don't get the whole welfare list. We get part of it because those people on welfare who receive any part of their stipend is federally funded. Those lists are confidential by federal law, and we can't release them without an act of Congress. And Gary, if your association will get the Congress of the United States.
Is that a significant number, by the way?
No, probably not. We get them from the other lists too. The demographers tell us that on the other lists that we get, the drivers, taxpayers, and voters registration, we get 85–90% of the population.
Right.
And then the 5th list is the list of unemployment compensation. People who are on unemployment compensation. So we have those 5 sources. Really 6, but the 6th is very minor. That's volunteers. Volunteers.
There are people who call up or write a letter?
There are people, mostly retired people, who come in and they want to serve, and they come down and they're eligible to serve.
How often can a person be called to serve?
Well, that's another one of the reforms, but it's one of the internal reforms. I'll get to that in a minute if you ask me the question.
How often can you call me down to your courthouse, Norman?
You're eligible to serve only once every 2 years.
Okay.
When you finish your service, you're not eligible to be called every 2 years.
Norman, if I'm blind or hard of hearing or I'm in a wheelchair, what are the restrictions, if any?
There are no restrictions. The eligibility requirements for jurors are that you must be able to communicate in the English language.
Okay.
They've eliminated the literacy requirements. You don't have to read and write. The word is now in the statute, communicate in the English language. You have to be over 18. You have to never have committed a felony. You have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be a resident of New York County. And that's it. Now, when we get to blind people or other handicapped people, there is no reason why they can't serve. We've had people who can't speak or hear, deaf mutes. We bring in and we pay for a sign language interpreter for those people.
Norman, we have to take a break now, but right after the break, I'm going to ask you, I know a judge in New York County just declared a mistrial because they felt one of the jurors couldn't speak and write English.
Yes.
You're watching Law Line. Stay with us. Hello, I'm Alan Schnorman, the host of Lawline, and I want to give you some important information about your legal rights. If you were seriously injured in an automobile, a fall down, or construction accident, you may be entitled to a substantial money award for your pain and suffering. It is important to speak to a knowledgeable attorney in that field. At my firm, Solomon & Schnorman, our practice is limited to personal injury law. We fight for the rights of accident victims. Don't try to evaluate the case yourself. If you have any questions about your accident, call us at 1-800-LAW-LINE. If you're too injured to come to our office, we will come to you. The consultation is free, and we only get paid when your case is settled or won. Remember, the insurance companies have lawyers protecting their interests, and so should you. Hello, you're watching Lawline. We're talking about jury reform. We have the county clerk here. Watch the show. He could call you for jury service. We also have Gary Pillersdorf, President-elect of the New York State Trial Lawyers.
Norman, get them off.
Norman, you're the Commissioner of Jurors. Recently, a Supreme Court justice just held a case and declared a mistrial because she felt one of the jurors could not speak English. And I know your office goes through a process that every juror, it's one of the requirements to speak and write English. What happened there?
Communicate in the English language. I don't know what happened in that case. I'm aware of the case, but I don't know all the details of what happened there. Let me tell you something. There's only one county in the state of New York that requires jurors to come into the office to qualify them. That's in the Bronx. In Bronx County, the Hispanic population is so large, a proportion of the whole population, that they feel that they need to talk to every juror before they qualify them and make sure that they can communicate in the English language. Every other county in the state, 61 other counties, there are 62 counties in the state, 61 counties qualify their jurors by mail. Now, what that means is that we send them a qualification questionnaire in the mail, and it's got to be completed in the English language, and it's signed by the juror. And frequently, those qualification questionnaires are completed by a child, let's say a son or a daughter of a juror who does not speak English, and we won't know that juror cannot speak English until we meet that juror in the courthouse, or the lawyers will meet him on the
I got to tell you, Norman, from the front lines, from the people who go into jury selection, we will get a panel. Alan, you've been through this hundreds of times. We will get a panel. Someone will turn around, put his hand up, and say to us, "Oh, I don't understand. I don't understand." Now, as part of this jury reform, in a manner to expedite jury selection, in a manner to make it go quicker, to limit the lawyers, to make it less onerous to the jurors, all right, there are, in some counties, JHOs, in other counties, there are judges, and what we meet over and over again is nonsense. I've heard that 100 times. You speak enough English, and that's the end of it. The attorneys will sometimes take pity on the person. I can tell you one case, and it's not in your county, it was in a different county, where a judge, a sitting Supreme Court judge, came down, did not believe the person's claim to not be communicative in English, all right, brought them back to the central jury room, made an announcement to embarrass the person in front of the whole panel. It shouldn't happen.
That's too bad.
And then turned around and said, if anyone sees them reading an English newspaper, let me know.
Well,
The problem is there has been an abuse of that.
that's an intemperate response.
Many people, though, there have been abuses of it. People have used that as an excuse. But what is happening is, in a get tough, nobody's getting out of here, we see them in the jury room all the time. The juror comes in and says, I told the clerk, or I told one of the people who interview them, I told them about a business hardship. I asked for an adjournment. They told me it was too many, but I really have the adjournment. What's happening is, I understand that from the commissioner of jurors' point of view, you have to take a get tough position, but these people are on there.
We don't have a get tough position.
Well, it appears. I got to tell you,
we do not.
From the part we see, it seems that
when we see a juror, and a juror tells us in the assembly room now, before he ever sees the lawyers
Right.
or the judge, the juror will tell us he can't speak English. So we talk to the juror. We have our clerks. And by the way, this is just an aside, the clerks we have in the jury assembly room, when we interview them, we interview them with respect to questions that do not appear on a civil service examination. For instance, are you a people person? Do you smile a lot? Can you grin and bear it? Are you friendly? Will the jurors understand that you're somebody that they can talk to and you'll sympathize with them? And those are our people in the assembly room. Now our clerk will talk to that juror and get an impression. Is this juror, as you said, trying to fake it? And a lot of them do. Is this juror really a non-English speaking person? And if they are, we get rid of them.
Commissioner, how many...
Some will filter through. Some will filter through no matter what.
How many jurors do you call in on any particular day?
We have that's another reform. We have yields. We have two, on the civil side, we have 2 return dates, Monday and Thursday of every week. On the criminal side, we have 3 return dates, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
That's new juror dates.
New jurors come in on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
And how many jurors do you call in?
We have a daily census in the 5 jury assembly rooms that we have in New York County of approximately 2,200 people every day.
Wow, what a job!
In order to get those 2,200 people, we used to have to summon something like 20,000 jurors.
You would get one.
We'd get 10%, a 10% return. Today, we've reduced that call because of this common perception that people have that jury service is more fairly spread throughout the community. We have 40% yields. We have 35% yields, which allows us to cut down on the call.
Commissioner Goodman, I get this summons in the mail. It says you are summoned for jury service, and if you fail to appear, you're liable for penalties.
That's right.
What penalties? What happens if I fail to come down?
If you fail to come down, if you ignore that summons,
yeah, I throw it in the garbage.
we have a statute that allows us. We call it a non-compliance procedure that we have. It's in the judiciary law. And what we do is we then send a letter to a juror, a follow-up letter, and saying, you were summoned on such and such a date, and you failed to.
I throw that in the drawer.
Then we give them a second notice. We give them a second
Same
notice.
drawer.
We do it 3 times by the statute, and the statute defines how we should do it. Exactly what kind of mail,
The drawers get crowded.
what the envelope should look like. Then we tell them that we will put you on a calendar. We're going to be called on a calendar in front of a JHO. Louis Kaplan is the one in New York
Judge
County.
Kaplan, yes.
Judge Kaplan. He's a retired judge, and he's JHO.
Oh, yes.
And every Friday morning. And we have this calendar, called a non-compliance calendar, and he can fine a juror up to $250
For failure to come down.
For failure to come down. And at the same time, of course, that's not the cost of not coming down. He can then order him or her to serve on a particular date, because the $250 fine plus the mandatory service. If they fail to show up on that
Commissioner
date,
Goodman, what happens if I'm a mother with 3 young children? Do I get an exemption for that?
Not an exemption, but you'll get consideration. Well, in other words,
I got 3 babies at home.
If you can establish that fact, we have guidelines that we have promulgated, which allow us to be very liberal and very generous to caregivers, not just mothers of small children, but caregivers of any kind.
You're not going to send somebody to my house to arrest me, are you, if I don't come down?
Not in New York County, we won't.
The trick is, bring the kids with you, and they'll get you out of the building right away.
In some other counties, they will.
They will.
Yes,
So jury, when you get that jury summons, it's a very serious item.
that's right.
And you must comply.
That's right. Exactly.
Gary, now with these new jurors, with having lawyers on your panels, doctors on your panels, and even sometimes judges on your panels, you find that they're being harder on the working class plaintiff, or are they getting defendants' verdicts? What's happening as a practical matter,
That's
Gary?
quantity effect. It's had an impact on the verdicts, but I think what's happening is you're getting a very different experience base, and that's why they're being punished. You go into a malpractice case, and this is something we talked about during the break, on a medical malpractice case, when you get a juror who his entire life has been exposed to only the best doctors and has had the best insurance care, they can't understand what can go on in a clinic. They can't understand that sometimes a person goes, a doctor has them sit there 6 hours with a baby burning up from fever, and their reaction is, well, why the hell don't you get up and do something?
And go to a different doctor.
But they've never had that experience, and unfortunately what's happening...
They don't know from Lincoln Hospital.
The way the panels... you can say that. It's your show. I can't say that. What's happening is that the people who are sitting there, the panels that you're seeing, you don't get that broad-based experience. The end result is they're much harder. The funny thing is when we joke about the captains of industry, these investment bankers, they're coming on the panels, they're being much harder to the plaintiff. What do you mean money for pain and suffering? If you couldn't go to the dance, you didn't lose any money, you're not giving any money for that. But boy, when they come in as clients, it's a different world.
Commissioner,
We had a case last year where one of our sitting criminal court judges was selected on a medical malpractice case. And he served on that case right through to a verdict. It was a penile implant case. And he sat through to a verdict. That's right, he sat through to a verdict. It happened to be a defendant's verdict. It's true. But we debriefed the jury after that verdict.
right?
The judge and I debriefed the jury.
Quickly? And what'd you find?
Quickly, we found that the judge who sat on that case did not control that jury. It was a very articulate jury. There were 3 women and 3 men, 3 blacks, 3 whites on that jury.
Commissioner Goodman, in the moment we have left, what would you like to tell all the potential jurors out there?
Come in and serve. That's what I...
Gary, in summation, what would you like to tell anybody who wants to come in before your panel?
Well, the truth is the system only works if people do come in. And once you're there, you have to understand why you're there and take the position that this could be happening to me. You cannot come in. You have to bring a little bit of tempering of your personal life and experiences as you sit through the whole thing. It's still a good system. And I hate to say it to his face, but they've done a good job.
Gary Pillersdorf, President-elect of the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, Commissioner Norman Goodman, who is Clerk of the Supreme Court, County Clerk of New York County, and Commissioner of Jurors. Thank you for appearing on Lawline.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
as
for having
always,
us.
this is Alan Schnorman, and thank you for watching Lawline.
You have been watching Lawline with your host, New York trial attorney Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman will be back with you next week at the same time. If you have any questions about this week's program, please write to Lawline, 63 Wall Street, New York, New York, 10005, or call area code 212-432-9111. This program was made possible by the law firm of Zalman and Schnorman, whose practice is limited to personal injury and insurance law.